such a shame. It's so depressing to think that, we just allow a genocide to happen, not only allow it, we are complicit in it. Our country, like how we're going to live this down once the truth finally comes out. I mean, at some point, people have to admit what happened. I mean, the Germans did figure, were able to did it, they had to live with that guilt. I wonder what it's going to be like in the future when we have to, live with this guilt that not only that we denied that it was happening, but that we made it happen.
Yeah,
It's just
no, it's going to be a
something you're gonna
permanent
have to,
stain
right?
on the reputation, of the U.S. And
Hmm.
we can't escape that, and everybody who's associated with it. Um, it's
I think we will
right now
admit
we're
at some
within
point.
this bubble, and it's just like within the U.S. you don't hear about genocide, and it's just all just some sort of crazy students who think this. But you leave the bubble, and it's the whole world is seeing it. It's just
Right.
it's right. It's leaking in, especially younger people that have access to social media to understand what's going on. But there are a lot of people in this country that just have no idea. But at some point, I don't think that you can escape it. I mean, the truth will seep through, and it's going to be again a permanent stain.
How do you think we'll take
It's going to have
that?
to be some sort of reckoning within the U.S. I don't know how it's going to play out.
Okay, yeah, I was just thinking it's going to. I mean, we think about how it's going to play out for us, just because we're Americans and we are part of this machine that is allowing this to happen. But what do you think would happen to just Jewish people in general? Because this is like Judaism, and Zionism have become, is Zionism has really tainted Judaism. We have that
Yeah,
association, and it's just like after this happens, and you say like, what happened here, people will associate the two unfairly because we know a lot of Jewish people are one of the most staunch um, people against the genocide that are really speaking out against it. Of course, Norman Finkelstein and Aaron Mate, Max. There's a lot, and we see a big growing population, but I almost wonder if Judaism and Zionism, in many ways, have just kind of been inextricably intertwined. And
yeah.
after
Well,
this
certainly,
ends, like, what's going to
right,
happen to Judaism? Like, hopefully, they
right.
can,
Well, yeah, there's no
re.
question. I mean, there are those brave individuals, and they're more than individuals. Again, in the younger
There's,
generation,
yeah,
there's a pretty large percentage of young Jews that are now opposed to Zionism and truly opposed. You had people that yeah, I know in past decades there are Jewish groups that claim to be critical, but like push came to shove, they were always on the side of the Zionists. But I think now you have people like, I mean, Max Blumenthal goes out and says things against that. I think very few of us would actually dare to say. I mean, he's just been very frank about what's going on in Israel, and and he's made it clear that there's this effort I know on a part of like a lot of Jewish Zionists to blame it all on Netanyahu or just on the the extremists, the Smotriches and the Ben Gavirs and so on. He says no, it's basically all of Jewish Israeli society. Um, So yeah, it would be unfair to say that all Jews support Zionists and support this genocide. That's clearly not true. Outside of Israel, within Israel, it's pretty much an accurate statement. It really is. There are individuals that oppose it, but it's just by and large, all Jewish Israelis are supporting it. And that's something that Max Blumenthal brings up again and again. And I think we just have to be honest about that. Sometimes there's people that try to pretend that, actually it's a vibrant, diverse society. In some ways it is, but not on these questions, not on, the genocide, not on the Palestinians. It really, they're unfortunately, they all have blood on their hands. They're all complicit. They're all supported. But so, and there's been so much of an effort over the decades to tie Israel to Judaism. That's what Israel is all about. It's a homeland for the Jews. And that has convinced a lot of people. That's the work that the Jewish Zionists have done over the decades, and they've been largely successful. So in the minds of most people, they're equated. And you
Right.
can't say, oh, this is just, irrational anti-Semitism. No, you worked hard to create this association, right? It's not the anti-Semites that did this. It was the Jewish Zionists themselves that did this. And so now, it's going to be hard for people to disassociate and say, in the U.S. you have this reflex generally, support for Jews and Zionism. There's a real powerful philo-Semitism in the U.S. and some Western countries. But at some point, you may get the opposite, as the truth seeps through. And then as it becomes clear, too, that if, we suffer the consequences, we're drawn into this fight, with disastrous consequences for our own country. And then it's finally, it breaks through the truth about Zionism and what was done in Gaza and Lebanon and so forth. It's, it's hard to see how there won't be, a resurgent anti-Semitism. There's people who are going to be really angry. So, people like Max Blumenthal are harshly, very, very critical of Israel, and they're condemned as being, enemies of the Jewish people. You could argue that actually they're the only ones that might end up saving the Jewish people, because they have put themselves forward on the right side of this question, and people are going to look back and remember that. We hope.
Mm-hmm. Right? Yeah, Zionism really co-opted Judaism. And it's tarnished it. It's such a shame, as if you're a Jewish person that doesn't support this. It's like they've turned your faith, everything that's supposed to be holy and to you, is now people associate genocide to it. That's right. That's a bad association. Yeah, you don't want that. I mean, it's.
And then, well, you have to say too, it's true of a lot of Christian churches in this country that have gone down the Christian Zionist road. And, they only have themselves to blame for doing that, but they too are tying themselves to this. It's supposed to be, this is the religion of Jesus Christ, it's just such an extraordinary distortion on every level of what Christianity is. But they've allowed their churches these churches have imported these very, very serious errors and put themselves on the side of genocide, and on the side of this ethno-supremacist ideology. It's you look at it, and I think centuries later you're going to look back and say, what happened? These people just went insane. But they're going to pay the price too. I mean, it's just these Christian churches. I certainly hope so. At some point, there needs to be a reckoning. What have you done?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a real shame. That when people see the Star of David, it's going to evoke bad thoughts for people, and it already
I
is.
Remember that, actually. I remember having that experience, when I was in, actually in East Jerusalem in 2011. And I remember, we observed all these, really this horrible, so many horrible manifestations of Zionism. The settlers had gone and seized different buildings, and then they were beginning to, just harass and attack their neighbors with impunity because they had the army against them. And it just, they're just creating misery all around, and houses were getting bulldozed, and, you have weeping families watching their the house that their ancestors lived in being reduced to rubble. And jeering settlers nearby. This is just horrible, horrible stuff. And I was, learning about this and observing it. And then I remember looking up and seeing, the Israeli flag, the Star of David, and a chill ran through, down through me. Just this sense of fear and horror. And that flag never evoked that kind of emotional reaction in me before, but it did after learning, what had happened. And that's the future we're looking at. More and more people are going to understand. It's not going to. Now you have, these idiotic American politicians always have Israeli flags on their in their social media accounts, and they show themselves a picture standing by the Israeli flag. And but there's someday, I certainly hope that someday there's going to be an awakening, and people are going to look at those pictures and say, my God, what is this man doing? Why is he associating himself with this?